It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Let's do this.
Nice. I feel like the theremin is like the key instrument.
I feel like we should just have the theremin throughout the whole. Let's just make a podcast that's just a theremin.
I'm in.
It's Bigfoot Collectors Club. I'm your host, Michael McMillian. With me always is your host.
Hey, I'm Bryce Johnson.
And your producer,
Riley Bray.
This is the podcast where we interview celebrity guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness.
Yeah.
And with us today, we have a very special guest. He is an actor and do you consider yourself a comedian?
No.
Yeah.
I would not be alone in that either.
Actor and performer. We've done a show together for the past few years at UCBLA called Gravid Water. You've seen him in 30 Rock. You may have seen him in Deadpool comic books and the new Guardians of the Galaxy comic book. He's been in a million things. He's an awesome dude. Ladies and gentlemen, it's SCOTT ADSIT.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
What's happening, man? Yeah.
Could be any time.
It could be any time.
Good day or night.
I wonder if people listen to this during the nighttime because it's sort of spooky, or if it's a daytime show because they may not want to drift immediately from this into nightmares.
I know. That's like a real thing. I can't watch a scary movie before bed. And maybe in the afternoon, but like...
what was the last scary movie you watched that actually kept you up?
Oh, geez. That's a great question. I don't know.
But you're an adult.
Yeah.
Well, stick around for another 45 minutes to an hour, and you may have a different opinion about that.
It's so true. You know, I was telling my 6-year-old boy, he's very sensitive to the movies that we show him. And, you know, I was like, hey, when I was like 6, my older brother and my dad, I'd spend the summers with my father, and I didn't get a say on the movies they chose, and my brother used to love to torture me with movies like Aliens and The Terminator, but I couldn't turn away. And today they're still like some of my favorite movies, you know, but they really kind of got into my head really good. Today I can't really do the like the ghost like taking over the house and like, you know, possessing you type movies.
You stay away from the James Wan films.
Yeah.
Because too scary or just don't believe them?
No, I have a super. That's a good question. I have a big imagination, so I like to like get inside, and I think I'll just spook myself. Yeah, I'd probably scare myself.
Wow, so you can't watch a ghost movie
I can
because you love ghosts so much?
No,
This is just too much for me.
This is just too much for me. I know that's strange enough, but yeah, they get inside my head. My wife's the same way. She's
Really?
like, I can't do it because.
So do you tell your 6-year-old, listen, be afraid of things.
Basically,
The things you can't understand or see, just be frightened of them.
Trust us.
that's pretty much
Trust
it.
your parents.
Yeah.
The unknown will get you.
Yeah, and now Daddy's got to go to his Bigfoot podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think, like, the movies that scared me the most as a kid were not the ones that had actual, like, real monsters. Like, I could watch Aliens and be fine with it, but E.T. scared the hell out of me. Because
Right.
it looked a little too human, and my imagination would always take the nice things and make them creepy.
Totally.
And that's what would freak me out.
Yeah, the frightening thing for me about ghosts is I was trying to figure it out why ghosts are scary, because they're just people who are in a different place and are confused, and that's it. Essentially, you've got a crazy person in your house,
Right.
and you can't
Yeah.
trust them,
Yeah,
right?
An invisible crazy person.
Yeah, I mean, malevolent or whatever, you know, lost or confused or needing to complete a task or whatever it is, they're just people.
right.
And generally, they can't touch you. They can't touch anything. Maybe they can move chairs or stack things or whatever, but generally they don't get at you. You're just afraid that they're in the house or watching you or whatever, and the potential that they might hurt you. But essentially, they're just, if you know, it depends on your definition of ghost, but I think they're just like confused people, right? Who are
like
just like,
that
I
they
don't want a crazy person in my house thinking it's their house.
It's just like having an old, like senile person,
Yeah.
like an old grandpa, just walking around bumping into cabinets.
It's like that. There's a great movie called The Others.
Oh yeah.
Which
That's a
is-
great flick.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen
Oh
The
man,
Others?
that's a good one.
It'd
That's a
scare the
great
shit out
ghost
of you.
movie. Yeah.
I'll check it out.
But it is. I mean, it's
Don't do it. You won't sleep again.
Don't read it. Don't read anything about it either.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a great creepy thing about confusion and all that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the closest to what a ghost would be if ghosts existed, which they do not.
Right.
Well, that's why I always think ghosts. Wait a minute. That's why I think the
End of podcast.
Yeah. Theremin for 2 more hours, and then your computer explodes. That's the thing that's always sad. I find it's sad about ghosts. Not only are they dead, and so you're like, oh, that sucks, they're dead, but also like they're dead and lost. Like they can't find their way to whatever the afterworld is. And the ones that always bum me out, and I know this is what most people find scary, are the little kid ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
But those break my heart because I'm like, those kids, they don't know what, come on, someone needs to go help those kids.
I know.
Get to the other side.
But there's an assumption that they know something we don't know, and that they're going to get us because with their evil innocence.
Which begs the question, are ghosts smarter than us? Are ghost kids smarter than us?
No, they're
And are
confused. They think they're supposed to be here, and they're not, right? So they're dummies. Ghosts are a bunch of dummies.
All right, so ghosts are idiots.
Ghosts, I challenge you. Prove me wrong, you idiots.
Let me ask you this. Has there ever been a ghost of a genius before? Or are we finding out that all ghosts are ghosts because they're idiots who, when they died, they couldn't figure out that they were dead?
They also can't communicate with us. They don't do it well. They have to go through a psychic or some person you have to pay
Yeah, right.
to talk to them.
Right, yeah.
I need a go-between. I guess I'll get this charlatan to do it.
Ghosts
Well,
are creating jobs, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
The job creators.
Guys, we are dependent now more than ever on the ghost economy. We need to keep these jobs alive.
A genius ghost would just go in front of Congress and say, "Okay, we're here.
Yeah.
We have rights, whatever they want." And they don't
I
because they
think
don't
you
exist.
just convinced me that ghosts don't exist.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
was
Moving on.
fully in the camp that they did, and now I realize there's no UN ghosts. It doesn't exist. They don't exist. Okay, before we move on, I have a little BCC news.
Yes.
Did you guys see the story about the pilots, the commercial pilots who saw UFOs
I did.
in February over Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is from CNN.com. I'm just going to read the story off the web because I'm lazy this morning.
Journalistic integrity.
Well,
Yeah, there you go.
I saw it
Because journalistic
from
integrity is paraphrasing. That's all it is, right? There's
Basically.
reporters who actually do stuff, and then everyone
Well,
else
yeah,
paraphrases.
yeah.
You know, there was a few outlets that picked it up. I saw it from Apple News, and
Oh, it was all
it
over
was
the
all
place.
over the place.
I think we put it up on the Facebook page. If not, it'll be up there by
Sure.
the time you read this. From CNN, 2 commercial pilots flying over the Arizona desert claim they saw an unidentified flying object pass overhead, according to a radio broadcast released by the Federal Aviation Administration. A Learjet pilot and an American Airlines pilot saw the object on February 24th and radioed the regional air traffic controller in Albuquerque. Was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago? The Learjet pilot said in a brief exchange. Negative, air traffic controller replied. Okay, the pilot said. Something did. A UFO, someone quickly responded. Yep, the pilot replied again with a chuckle. So, first plane, this thing goes over their head,
Yeah.
and they radio control tower. They're like, what is flying out here with us? It was going in the opposite direction. Then, minutes later, FAA controller alerted an American Airlines plane
be on the
that was
lookout.
flying in the island. Yeah, that was flying behind him. He said, we just got a report. Have you guys seen anything up there? And they say, no. I'm no longer reading from CNN now. I'm just going to the straight to paraphrasing. And the American Airlines pilot radioed back like a couple minutes later and said, yep, it just passed over us.
Yeah.
And they asked if they got a good look at it, and they said no. It looked like it was in the middle of the day. It said it was very shiny. It almost looked like it had bright lights, but they couldn't identify it. There was nothing out there flying. So it was just a cool corroborating eyewitness
Totally.
account of something strange flying over there. They asked, I think the air traffic controller asked the American Airlines pilot if it was, I think one of them said it could have been, they asked if it was a Google balloon, I guess. And,
Right.
and they
He
were
said
like,
no.
no,
Yeah.
that's not it. You wouldn't see that.
I think we're over the swamp gas balloon misconfusions thing.
Why
you
is
know?
it always a balloon?
I know.
Because often it is.
No. Now I understand what kind of guest you're going to be on this show. It's going to be a fun episode.
These are my favorite ones, though. There's these commercial airline pilots who are flying the skies nonstop, and finally when they see something they can't explain, and this actually got some news media attention dimension, which I thought what was interesting is like, oh, this is kind of splashing over the news waves when normally, you know, these commercial airline pilots, they see them, I wouldn't say quite often, but especially military pilots. And I would say there's about, 25 to 50 cases like this a year reported to MUFON where like, pilots see something, report them back in. Most pilots don't want to report them back in.
Yeah, because they get made fun of.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, when these pilots land, they have to fill out a report on the whole thing. And so maybe it's just, I feel like ever since that kind of December article came out where the Pentagon acknowledged they're studying their I think it was called the Advanced Threat Initiation Program, that maybe these news outlets are a little bit more apt to
got
report them.
funded in Congress by Harry Reid and other senators that had seen these things when they themselves were flying planes in like the Korean War.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Okay, so if it's an alien flying a spaceship.
Not necessarily an alien.
Okay, so if it's Russians spying on us.
Not necessarily Russians.
So who are you?
I don't know. Go on.
No, you're naysaying
what's your
what
point?
I'm
No,
saying, so I want to know what your theory is. I would like to disprove whatever you think.
No, I want to hear your thing. I'm sorry. I'm being a bad host.
I'm just wondering what the purpose of flying very low on our radar and close to our jets is doing for whoever's flying that aircraft.
Well, part of the thing I remember too is they made kind of a meal out of it. Was that this is very near Roswell, and and so it's like they tried to connect those dots.
So that's the media trying to anchor us, make
anchor
a story of it,
yeah,
because there's not much there.
Yeah,
but
we want there to be.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's the problem.
That is the problem. But also, these things are flying around. There's something. And that's what I mean. They're not necessarily aliens from another planet.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily Russians. We have our theories on this show, what they could be.
Please.
There's a few different classes. You have the sort of nuts and bolts field where this is a
a metal object, handmade, constructed,
either here on Earth
privately,
or maybe, or from an extraterrestrial, like a planet Zeta Reticuli visiting or whatever. Then you have sort of an interdimensional theory, which is these things exist in sort of the same field of space and field of time that we do, but
dimensional overlap.
Yeah,
dimensional overlap. They're popping in, they're popping back out.
And these things might be, the UFOs themselves might be some type of, the craft itself is a type of entity that is from another dimension that isn't necessarily handmade by aliens or man, is not necessarily a nuts and bolts object, but might be in and of itself its own type of being.
I think the evidence points to that as being the obvious answer, yes.
But I think it could be any and above all of these things.
Absolutely.
I don't think just because it is a Russian...
It could also be a balloon, and they just didn't identify it in their minds as a balloon.
True.
Yes, but you would also think that if you've got the air traffic controller saying it's not a balloon, and we don't know what this is, then that leaves it open. Yeah, okay, maybe it's a balloon, but maybe it's also a UFO.
Maybe.
I mean, I think it's a UFO just by definition that it's an unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could be, there could be a giant goat god that coughed out a piece of metal he was eating and it flew over the plane. It could be that as well.
It could be that.
You can't say it isn't.
No, you absolutely can't.
Well, if we have enough of these stories, though, now, from the past, I'd say 100 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just narrow it down 100 years. We have enough eyewitness sightings. We have enough
video
stories,
testimony.
Photographic. We have just released in December, Air Force pilots reporting chasing a fleet of unidentified flying objects. This is real stuff.
Yeah.
No, but there is some. The thing is, when you start examining these cases, enough. There's enough repetition in them. There's enough that they have in common that points to a recurring phenomenon that is unknown, that is consistent within the realm of, okay, this is what acts and behaves like a UFO.
Yeah, they're not obeying our current laws of physics. They're
and of course you have all the other times they are balloons and they're weird stuff in the sky. But I think in those wild field there are still some that are unexplained.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an example like that one that in the December in the New York Times they released that article about that the Pentagon program. They also released 3 videos along with it.
Yeah,
and one was recorded on an F-18 and a young pilot. He's got it on his on his control lock, and he's really basically kind of watching this kind of like light globule. And what's great is I love the pilots.
That's a technical term.
Yeah, exactly. What I love are these pilots are talking to each other. Are you seeing this thing? Yeah, I'm seeing it. And it's starting to like morph and shapeshift as they're watching it, and then zoom, it just blinks out like a light bulb. But when you get like, especially those military jet pilots, their testimony along with their video that they took of it, because these guys pretty much know what kind of technological prowess is in the sky, and so they can immediately kind of nix that. Like, I know they tried to spin, like you were saying, and maybe the Russians have some sort of a technological advancement
Or
over
we
us.
do.
But the director of the program said, and he was like, in all likelihood, that is just not the case. These are.
He came everything from saying short. I just listened to another interview with him. He came just short of admitting that he thought that they weren't from this planet.
Yeah. And funny enough, he left the program because he said the government's interest in this was waning. So they weren't. He said they weren't taking it seriously enough.
Yeah.
Which I think is so interesting. They're just like, yeah, those are great UFO videos, but we got to work on some other budgets. And so they cut that, but I guess they're still running.
It's like trying to grab smoke. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and why
very
are we
true.
spending billions of dollars on trying to grab smoke? That's a great analogy.
It
for
is.
it. Scott, tell us, please, if any, what is your personal paranormal history?
Well, I have never seen anything that I couldn't explain. I believe I was going through my history and I couldn't think of anything that made me a believer. But I do have a story that was handed down through my family because my family came from southern or mid Illinois, and there was a story there around 1877. It's kind of a rural town close to the Indiana border called Whatseka, and there was a girl there named Rancy Venom.
Rancy Venom.
Yeah.
That's a great
Her
name.
full name was Lou Rancy, but they called her Rancy.
And this is is this someone that your family knew or was in your family?
Yeah, my family was friends of the family.
Okay.
And Rancy was, I think, 13 when she started falling asleep for hours in the middle of, walking or helping around the house. And so she'd fall asleep for hours, 5 hours at a time, and then just wake up. And then eventually she started waking up and saying she'd been to heaven. And she talked to angels.
Whoa.
And she had spoken to her little dead brother. And so...
Smart kid. He made it through.
Yeah, right.
and he seems to know who he is and where he is.
Yeah.
And so this got a lot of attention, of course, and they had psychiatrists come in and talk to her, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her or what was going on, and so they were going to commit her to an insane asylum.
That's a shame.
That fucking sucks.
In Whatseka, Illinois. And at that time, insane asylums were dumping grounds.
Yeah.
And people just stay there forever and probably go insane there. So she'd become a bit of a celebrity because of these visions or whatever she
Near-death
experienced.
experiences,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. So a guy came, another person from Whatseka came, named Asa. I forget his last name. Forget
Asa
it.
Voss works. That's
And-
a cool name too.
And Asa had a daughter named Mary who had died a few years earlier, and she was suffering from the same thing.
Weird.
And so he was what was called then a spiritist.
Mm-hmm.
He believed in the supernatural and ghosties. And so he brought in a doctor named Stevens, and they met Rancy and talked to Rancy and put her under a mesmerization spell and started talking to her and hanging around the house and getting to know the family, the Venom family. And Rancy then would occasionally, in these hypnosis sessions, channel people she said were dead people. A guy who had committed suicide and a woman who had died. And that was all very impressive and support for Stevens and not Voss, whatever his name was. And Asa, and they encouraged that and hypnotized her some more. And eventually, Rancy woke up and said she was Mary.
Right.
And so she became Mary, and her father Asa was thrilled, and Mary would go away, and Rancy would come back, and then it would go back and forth between them over the course of a few weeks. And then eventually Mary took over, and there was no Rancy.
I think I've heard this
And
story
these are two
before.
It's called the
separate-
Whatseka Wonder.
Yeah, I think I've heard this.
And these are two separate people.
Yeah,
One of them
Mary
is dead,
Mary
yeah.
had been Asa's daughter who was dead. And Rancy started channeling her, and then Mary
Unbelievable.
would come through, and then Mary eventually took over.
Eventually, she was living in the Venom house, not really knowing the Venom family, not remembering where to go or who they were or anything. So they took Rancy to the other house across town that she'd never been to, and she felt very at home there, and
Sure.
was married in the house for a few months
Wow.
and lived as Mary. And then one day she, after all these months of living there, and there were weird things like she had not met her sister, or Mary's sister, who was still living. And her name was, I'm terrible.
This is already better researched than any story we've told on this show, so don't worry about it.
It's true.
Get
she-
ready for mine coming up.
But she
wish
had
I could remember
tapped
her name.
into this Mary's life, and she knew everything.
Well, her Mary's sister came up the walk with her mother, and she recognized her,
Yeah.
and called her by her nickname,
Right.
which no one had called her by that anymore since Mary had died.
Mary had died.
And then she also said, "My God, why are you so old?" Right?
Wow.
And eventually she said, "I'm going to be leaving soon," and she was sad about that. And she said, "It's time for me to go." And so she spent for 2 weeks. She was like on a farewell tour and hugging everybody and visiting relatives and saying, "I'm going to have to go." And then
Wow.
she woke up as Rancy and went home, and it was she just lived a normal life.
That is wild.
Did Mary have like descriptions from the other side? Could she recall?
Not that I've read, not that I've heard in the stories.
You know,
God, that's so wild.
Well, I mean, it is fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, even if it was a hoax,
Yeah.
Well,
a well
I'm
done
reminded
hoax.
of a couple different types of stories. There's a case of, I think it was a boy in India who was 6 years old, and he claimed complete knowledge of old aviation World War II planes, something he had no idea
Not
about.
in India.
It's maybe somewhere. I might not have the details.
No, this
correct,
is
but
there is one. There's an American
Yeah.
kid that's just like this.
maybe
too.
that was it. But it also reminds me of a something called acquired savant syndrome, where there was a case of a guy who jumped in a pool, hit his head, and knew how to play classical piano after that. But it's almost like tapping into.
Guys, don't get any big ideas out there.
Right, but tapping into someone's energetic life, or being it so close to family, that makes it it begs you into the question of afterlife and stuff like that, or just like tapping into some sort of they call it an Akashic record. Everything that ever happened, everything that is going to happen is up in the ether, and all you need to do is tap into it. It's a very strange story.
What do you think?
Well, I
And
think
what's your family think? Because the story's been passed down.
The family embraces it like, isn't this fun? And
Yeah.
isn't that interesting and a cause for concern and kind of like lovely and horrific and bottom line, interesting.
Yeah,
Which is that elusive thing we all seek, right?
yeah.
So what science has realized in the last 150 years is that Rancy probably suffered from Sleeping Beauty syndrome, which is a kind of narcolepsy that leaves people falling asleep and then hallucinating and that kind of thing.
Of course, they've reduced it. I'm not surprised there.
Well-
Science is, we've got the answer.
But that's fascinating too. I mean,
But also,
doesn't
but it also, I think, speaks to the idea that people want so desperately what they want.
Yeah.
And Asa missed his daughter so much that he went over and introduced the idea of Mary
Right,
into
of
her
course,
life.
sure.
And then suddenly Mary was there.
Right.
So I think Rancy, while she may not have been a schizophrenic, I think she had some mental problems where she heard voices, and that fed into everything everyone wanted it to be. And then she also probably, you know, the people being what they are, she probably liked attention, and she was a national name for a little while, and she just kept getting encouraged by Asa and Stevens to prove what they hoped.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one theory, absolutely.
Bryce is not going to let go of this.
Well, I'm not. I don't know. I think there might be. Who knows? I mean, you find with a lot of these people, you say, they like the attention and stuff. A lot of these people who undergo like their abduction cases or stuff like that, or traumatizing ghost experiences. There's sometimes they don't like being in that club.
Absolutely. But I think there's also something very seductive about it, nevertheless.
True.
And don't you feel sometimes as a believer, someone who wants to believe, like that poster in Mulder's office? Don't you feel like an evangelical who gets psychically healed and faints on stage, and then has nothing changed within their body, but they believed in that moment that they're going to get healed, and they fall down and give their money, and they've been suckered by someone who's got an earpiece in.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of debunking. I was just reading about that one guy exactly. He uncovered a lot of those cases, like, Uri Geller and the bending of the spoons. He's like, this is how they do it.
The Amazing Randy.
Yeah, The Amazing Randy. Yeah, there's a great documentary about him.
Anybody listening, go on YouTube and find The Amazing Randy debunking psychics. It's the funniest, most. It fills me with rage.
And he had a
link
challenge
in the show notes.
Yeah, he had a challenge as well. I offer $1,000.
$1 million.
Well, it ended up becoming. It went from 1,000 to 100,000 to 1 million. And
for what? To do what?
To have
prove
somebody
psychic
prove
ability.
supernatural ability. And he was able to fairly well debunk any and everything that came his way.
It's hysterical and just infuriating to watch the videos.
But what you'll find is in a lot of these cases, and whether it be Bigfoot, UFO, or ghost, is when they try and relegate it to a controlled a controlled environment. Like, I want you to do it at this time and at this place. Whatever it is, it says, we're not going to play by those rules.
But you've seen the videos, or you've read stories about
Absolutely.
people who like hire a psychic and ask for information about the place they're in, and they give this long history and detailed stories about the guy who lived here and his myxomatosa, and the fact that he was run over by a dairy cart and all this, and then you come to find out that all that was written as a fiction and put on the internet a week before they brought the psychic in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, listen, there's a lot of those cases where you're absolutely right. I mean, these things are pretty well easily debunked, but the cases that we like to focus on are when you get like, there was one incident, I believe it was in Africa. It was that case that John Mack was studying towards the end. It happened on a schoolyard. I believe it was called the Ariel Schoolyard in Africa, and right in the middle of the recess, this ship landed, materialized out by the field, and all these kids saw it, about 60 of them, and they reported things coming out, and so when you get like some sort of like
eyewitness
a
account,
mass eyewitness account, along with, and then when you start to triangulate it with photographic evidence that can match it and stuff, and these are the cases that get.
But the quality of human nature is that if all of my friends are saying that, I must be wrong, and so I'll agree with them. And if I go to a tent revival and I get the power of the Holy Spirit swept across my aisle, I go down with everybody.
Right.
Not because I want to, not because I'm choosing to, but I just do.
Yeah.
Because even though there's nothing going on, it's all that mass hypnosis thing. I think I'm sorry to say, I think it all can be reduced to that, because I mean, I love fantasy and the poetic irony of science fiction and psychic things and entertainment like that. I love it. And it makes me cry and it makes me laugh and scared and all that. But I just can't get into the idea that this is happening over the years, without any provable circumstance. Not one provable circumstance.
Well, I would disagree. I think there's a lot of proof out there in some of these amazing cases, especially like we were saying that the with the pilot releasing that video, you can't not help but to look at this thing that these pilots are seeing and say, what is that?
Yes,
that is
but saying what is that is not the same as saying that's a blank.
I totally agree.
And that I think is that's what keeps the mystery going.
Profitable.
That's
yes.
well, hopefully. No, but I'm saying like that is what. For example, I haven't told you the story. I've told it on the podcast. I always am worried about repeating. But a couple years ago, I woke up to my dog barking at the window. And I walked out to the window. The curtains were drawn, so I couldn't see through. So I'm already going, okay, I can't judge completely what I'm seeing here. But outside my window, my ground floor window, there was the silhouette of an entity that looked like it had directly come off the screen from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
A movie you had seen.
Yes. However, long neck, inverted, kind of teardrop-shaped head, did not look human, and so on the nose that I was not scared. I thought to myself, the first thing I knew for sure was that there was somebody at the window peering in through the curtains.
How far away was he?
Oh,
or she?
Like 10 feet. Okay. My dogs are now going ape shit, barking at this thing. And
have they seen the movie?
They have not seen it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't know, but this also kind of opens up to a whole other question about this. So they're going ape shit, and I think to myself, well, geez, that looks like an alien. That's the first thing that came to my head. Mm-hmm. And then right when I thought that, the being at the window turned its head, and I could see where the elongated neck fused at the back of the skull.
Wow.
And it looked like a golf wedge, like a sand wedge, but it was undulating like a person or a biological creature moving. And it only came up just over it had to be standing about 3 to 4 feet tall. Mm-hmm. It just came over the window sill. So you just saw a long skinny neck and this big head, classic gray alien shape. So when it moved, I went, holy shit. And I turned on the light and it ran off. And I could not find it. I went out. So I walked around the property. My neighbor came out and I asked him if he had just gotten home because he works on a film. He was working on a film at the time. And I knew he was getting in late. I live in an apartment building.
How old were you then?
This is 2 years ago.
Okay.
And my neighbor said, no, I've been up. And he goes, why? And I didn't want to say what I saw. I just said someone was looking in the window. The dogs woke me up because someone was looking in the window. And he said, that is so creepy. He said, because I've been up for the past hour watching Netflix. And he said, I could have sworn I was being watched. That felt like there was something in the apartment with me. And so we looked around. I had him actually like stand outside my window so I could see what the shadow of a grown man would look. It looked completely fucking different. Like it literally night and day. Well, not literally night and day, but I mean, it was a completely different shape in the window. So here's the thing. I don't know what I saw. I cannot say it was an alien. I actually didn't even feel like it was actually an alien. I actually felt like my instinct told me that I had caught a glimpse of something passing through. Mm-hmm. If my dogs had not seen it first, if I had not woken up to my dog growling and then barking at it, I would have thought I was seeing things. But this is a situation where I saw something that was similar to many other accounts that I've read, and I can point to that as being the guiding light of what I had encountered. I cannot define it. I will never say for sure what I saw was this, but it is something that I cannot explain, and has kind of there's a whole reason I'm doing this show is because there's that little window that little window of mystery that's open for me there, where I cannot. I know it was not a guy standing at the window. It was something else.
Well, sure. And, we did an episode on, excuse me, a guy named John Mack. He was a Harvard psychiatrist, one of their leading he was the chairman of their field over there. And he took on this, the alien abduction case studies. It was something he really didn't want to get into. He was hesitant to get into it, but he's like, I'm going to look into this. And he ended up in his lifetime interviewing over 200 supposed alien abductees. And it's like you. He wasn't able to reduce this to like, hey, these are cases of aliens coming and taking these people physically. He never got around to literally defining what he thought may be happening, but he said there is a real phenomenon here happening, and it's more than just hallucination. These people aren't just seeing things. They're not schizophrenics. They're not crazy. They don't meet those scientific standards or definitions of what a crazy person is feeling. So we're left with a mystery of no one's really sure what's happening,
Right.
and that's why there's these different fields of like, hey, there's the nuts and bolts crew that's like, these are aliens from planet so and so. They're coming here. They're observing us. And then you have other fields that are like, like Carl Jung, who's like, hey, maybe this is like a kind of a psyche and matter.
There's some sort of psychic projection happening
Sure.
in tandem with these things.
Right.
That there is some sort of phenomenon happening. This is where when you joked about how my dog's seen Close Encounters, I wonder if perhaps the shape of the window was something different to my dogs
Right.
as well. That there's sort of like, it requires the object being observed and the observer to create what the image is. And
If you had seen a movie about like a man who had transformed into a driving, like a golf driver, then you might say, I know I saw a golf man.
maybe. I don't know.
As it leaves you here.
Yeah, I'm just using shapes to explain,
Right. And
objects to
I'm saying
compare it
you
to.
see something you don't recognize, so you assign it something that is
Right.
familiar.
Right, exactly. Or even one step further, that the thing that's there to be observed. And this is a wild theory. I mean, this is just wild. Let's throw this shit out there. And we'll see in the high strangeness case today, I think there is some weird fucking shit going on. And I think that a lot of what might be possible too is that whatever in our heads manifests in relationship with whatever that thing the entity that wants to be observed. So perhaps if you are an evangelical, that might have looked like a devil creature instead of an alien.
Yeah.
Or if you were living 300 years ago in Ireland, it might appear as a leprechaun. But it to me, in the 20th century, being an X-Files guy, being someone who had no less than 2 weeks before then been to Roswell, New Mexico.
That shouldn't influence you at all.
Well, but I'm saying perhaps it did. But it doesn't negate that there could have been an entity on the other side of that window that was
You're right. You
using-
can't prove a negative.
No.
But it could also be if you had just completed a course at MIT, you might be able to identify that immediately what that is.
Are you calling me a stupid ghost?
No. I'm not saying you're a ghost at all.
No, I think a lot of these cases will show, I think, that the observer plays an integral part to what they're witnessing. And that's how
I think
I've
it
always
takes
It's religion, isn't it?
in a sense, maybe not.
Because you interpret it the way it makes sense to you, and the creation of the universe is based on a patriarchy, which we are familiar with.
But I don't put my foot down and say I saw an alien gray.
Right.
I do not do that. I say I saw something that was highly unusual, highly strange, that has a lot in common with other similar cases like this and stuff that I've read since then.
But it's also like it's one of your good stories, and you want it to be something that is undefinable. And
yeah, but no. I have to argue with you because
when it's just unexplained,
I would have rather not had that experience, and it's not
but you
about
built a
this
podcast around it.
Because I know what I don't know what that was. You know what I mean? I know what I saw. I know what my dog saw. I cannot explain it.
You know what you don't know.
Right.
Okay.
Right. No, but this is a weird thing. When I hear stories of people talk about this and go, I know it wasn't a balloon. I know it wasn't a plane. I know it wasn't a bear. I know, what I saw was this specific character or figure. I can relate to that experience, and I tend to go, all right, just because you saw a hairy Neanderthal creature sitting up in a tree doesn't mean it's a Sasquatch. But I believe that they saw what they saw.
You believe that they believe what they saw?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, okay. I mean, that's so subjective that it's inconsequential.
Right. No, look, this is the essence of the argument of the mystery, right? This is the argument of all of this stuff. You're right. We don't have proof of it. I'm not trying to say that my experience proved that that's what it was. And it's not something that I carry around as like a party story either.
Well, even when we get proof that is like almost irrefutable, like just to take for an example, like crop circles, when these investigators go, look into
I love that you're trying to calm this conversation down by introducing crop circles into it.
But no,
let's de-escalate this debate.
I mean, people often ask for where's the physical proof, and then you give it to them, whether it's implants that the doctors are taking out.
You've got to go back to crop circles. Are you saying that that's proof? That's physical proof of aliens visiting?
I'm saying there's a lot of physical proof within
physical evidence.
Physical evidence, not proof. You're right. Thank you. There's a lot of physical evidence within those crop circles.
But you know that the crop circles stopped happening essentially when the people doing it were caught.
No, I know what you're talking about.
It.
But that's not true. That's not true at all. The two people that claim to make a majority of the crop circles are still appearing in London. In all those places every year.
Because the video came out. Everyone can do it now.
No, I don't think that's true. Listen, the evidence that I was referring to are like, the actual genome of the crop is changed, is molecularly changed. There's electromagnetic radiation in some of these patterns. You're not going to get like with a board and a string going around,
But what's the logic of this communication?
There's eyewitnesses of people seeing these crop circles form in front of their eyes. Literally, there's a cases where planes will fly over, and then on their way back to the airport, those crop circles, they're there, large crop circles that could not be made by two. These are, happen literally over minutes at a time.
Yeah, but there's also eyewitness reports of Jesus coming up to a woman and saying, "Hey, you've got great tits."
I know, but
thank you, Jesus.
But when you're asking for like,
Jesus.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
My dad made those.
Right.
Ew, creepy Jesus.
But there's a lot of evidence in those crop circles that cannot be explained. Physical evidence.
Look, the point is we can't. Right, we're never going to be able to convince you of. I'm never going to be able to convince you of what I saw. I don't actually think I have anything to convince you of. I can tell you what I witnessed and that I cannot explain it.
I believe that entirely.
That's it. That's all this is. However, that instance is consistent with other similar
but
cases.
It also is consistent with your desire for it to be something extraordinary.
Yes, although I don't think this is the part I'm hanging on to. Yes, you're correct. However, when I'm waking up at 3:33 in the morning because my dogs are barking, I'm thinking, there's nothing in that moment where I'm like, there's nothing leading up. I'm like, I better shut the dogs up because I think Kyle's coming home and the neighbors are going to wake up. And let me finish my point.
Yeah.
And then I see this thing, I go, completely takes me by surprise, completely takes me out of the moment, and suddenly I am having a profound experience.
Lucky you, and how exciting.
Yes, right. But I'm not like, despite the fact that we have it's inspired a podcast to a degree, I think I might still have this podcast had that not happened.
Well, and to use that argument, with those commercial airline pilots that just reported this thing, are you saying that they have a desire to see an unidentified flying object, zoom across their commercial airline plane? Probably not, A lot of those case studies of the abduction phenomena, there's people who have never watched the Alien movies or had any idea what those were. But they're all explaining the same thing across time, across culture too, where there's similar circumstances that just can't be correlated to, oh, hey, we watched the same movie. They're experiencing the same thing with similarities that are pretty much, you can't just, I mean, listen, I'm not trying to argue for the point that I have no idea what's out there. I know there's something that's happening.
So there have been many abductions, and some of them are very similar to each other.
The majority of them are.
Okay.
Across time and across space, different countries, different people.
But it's missing time. It's vague memories of being examined.
It's not vague memories. There are very clear memories.
Okay. Some are vague, some are clear, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Of course.
Sure.
Okay. And some are wildly report entities of wide variations as well.
Right. So there's gray aliens and there's rhino headmen.
Basically, I don't know if there's a case with rhino headmen, but there's gray aliens, there's reptilians,
insectoid
there's weird.
types.
We've done stories on this of people seeing strange creatures, strange aliens, and they are bizarre.
So are they all from different planets? Or are they part of a federation who have come and decided to very quietly?
Your guess is as good as ours. Who knows?
Who knows?
There's a great.
I do kind of subscribe to the idea that just like a bug doesn't understand what you're doing to it, we don't understand what's being done.
We bring this up all the time.
Sure.
I think that there is something else happening in reality, whether it is literal alien creatures coming to visit us or slipping from another dimension, or it's some type of phenomenon about the human existence that we have that science has not been able to figure out.
Do you think there's some
is.
Message that this is trying to be conveyed?
A lot of times there are messages in this stuff. In my situation, there was no message there. Literally, the instinct that I had was it was like seeing a raccoon in the wild or something. It was like literally I had caught a glimpse of something that I don't typically get to see. And it seemed to me like something that was just passing through.
If this happens again, can I suggest one thing?
Yes, please.
Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have a story that is going to infuriate our guests.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Bryce Johnson from Bigfoot Collectors Club. Listen, if you have a paranormal story, we want to hear it. Write to BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com with your paranormal encounter, and we just might read it on a future episode.
And welcome back, and it's time for High Strangeness. Now, if you, I really picked a gem of a story for today's guest. This story is so insane that, I mean, I am very, this is one of these stories of high strangeness that I tend to come down on the side of, I don't believe any of this, okay? Right. But it's a great story, and the cool thing about it is we have a couple witnesses that support some of these accounts. There is some physical evidence there. The military police are involved. Mm-hmm. The police are involved. Anyway.
Arresting drunk people.
Yeah, arresting drunk people. Well, and but it's one of these stories that it's so wild that it's one of that I just enjoy for the story of it. As listeners know, I tend to like the stories like the Flatwoods Monster or the Verona's UFO landing, where there's a crashed UFO or a UFO landing, and whatever steps out of that craft is actually not like the alien grays. It's more of like a 1950s B movie monster. They're a little bit more colorful, a little bit more really weird stuff.
Jack Kirby.
Yeah, like Jack Kirby shit. We've actually brought him up on I'll show you a photo sometime of the Verona's UFO drawings of what this creature, and he looks straight up like the Juggernaut from Jack Kirby comics. This is a thing that happened on the other side of the Iron Curtain before they could even get Marvel comics in the 80s.
That should be it there.
Yeah, so it's cool. But and this one though is just chock full of high strangeness, and it's one that I felt like if I were actually to get any further into researching this, I might go crazy. So this is the story of the Zanfretta abductions that took place in the late 70s and early 80s in Italy. Now, Piero Fortunato Zanfretta was a 26-year-old security guard working for a private firm called Valbasago. So it was his job to patrol neighborhoods in and around the Marzano, Italy area. And he's kind of like, you see those patrol cars, private security roaming around your neighborhood, or like ADT. He was basically the Italian version of that. On December 6, 1979, he drives up to a private villa belonging to Dr. Ettore Brigid and notices that the gate is wide open and there are lights moving around in the lawn. So Zanfretta says to himself, okay, we got some thieves. This is what I'm here to do. So as he's approaching, his car stops working. His car shuts off. So he kind of was like, that's weird, but whatever. He's going to get out and investigate anyway. So he gets out and he draws his weapon. And as he's sneaking around like a garden wall to see who the thieves with the flashlights in the lawn, he gets a push on the back of his shoulder and he turns around and he claims that he came face to face with a 10-foot tall green monster that had a saggy flesh with 3 horns protruding out of each side of its face, yellow triangular eyes, red veins popping out of the top of its head, and long fingers with circular fingertips. The thing also had a metal, what looked like a metal strip or breathing apparatus around its mouth. Okay. So
Not your typical alien.
Yeah.
Let me ask it. This was at night,
This is at night.
and you needed a flashlight to see anything.
He had his flashlight.
He had a flashlight.
He had his flashlight with him, and he actually, in the story, he says that he dropped his flashlight when he saw it, picked it back up, and ran. And as he was running, he heard a hissing sound coming from the other side of the villa. And he looked over his shoulder and saw a giant triangular craft rise that was
Made of snakes.
made of snakes. It was 30. It was lifted by snakes. That was 30 meters wide. He said about 30 meters wide, and it was super bright, glowing with all these different colored lights and immense heat. He got back to his car and managed to radio to headquarters, to the security firm, saying something's going on. He was panicking.
We got a 487.
Yeah. Giant reptilian creature. I love that all of our eyewitnesses all have southern accents, no matter where they're. This is in Italy.
Every time.
Yeah, every time. Even our scientists have redneck accents. But he was. They said on the other end he was going, they're so hideous. I don't know what's happening. He was like sputtering, panicking. So they send 2 guys out there, and it's an cold, icy night. It's in early December, and when they get to the villa, they find the car, and they find Zanfretta laying face down in the lawn. And they said the first weird thing about it was that Zanfretta was warm and dry, even though the ground was wet and it was cold out, and that the car was hot and on to the touch and hot inside of the car as well, as if some immense heat had been, it absorbed some type of heat. So, they wake him up. He cannot, he claims to have blacked out after making the radio call. I think about an hour or so had passed. And the Italian military police got called as well, because once they started hearing, he told the guards, he's like, I saw this thing, I saw this craft. They called the military police, the Carabiniers, and they came out that night. And while they're talking to Zanfretta about what happened, they found 2 semicircular imprints in the lawn behind the villa that could have looked like landing gear had depressed that area. Sure. And the papers ran it within the next couple days, and a lot of people in town were making fun of Zanfretta. They brushed it off immediately as a hoax.
Until the proof arrived.
Well, exactly. If you were going to look for any proof in this, it only gets weirder and it only gets more and more unprovable. But there was a reporter from the Corriere Mercantile, Rino Di Stefano, who became very interested in the case. He went, all right, this guy's kind of being ridiculed, but this is a really interesting story, so I'm going to go talk to this guy and see if I can find out more about it. And one of the things that he found out when he was reporting the story, that he confirmed with military police that there had been 52 eyewitness accounts that night of strange lights in the sky around the Marzano area. So the reporter, DiStefano, says, you know what? I know this. He knew a psychiatrist who was also a hypnotherapist named Dr. Mauro Moretti, and he brought Zanfretta to him to see if he could get more of retrieve the memories from this missing time.
A regressed hypnosis.
Right. So under hypnosis, Zanfretta recalled being taken on board of the triangular craft between the time he radioed and when the guys arrived, where the green monsters placed a helmet on his head that Zanfretta believed was an instrument used to translate their alien language. They sat him in a bright white room and explained that they had arrived on Earth from the third galaxy, whatever that means.
Counting from where?
Exactly. And would return soon. And the next thing Zanfretta can recall is being woken by the guards on the lawn. So
We're from the third galaxy.
Yeah.
That's really all we're going to tell you.
that's we're gonna just zero it down to that.
We want to keep it layman for you.
Would you like a dragonfly?
Yeah, I mean this story is full of just nonsense, honestly, but it's all really fun. So that was kind of like, and DiStefano thought, the reporter thought, okay, this stuff is so crazy, I don't know what to make of this. And then later that month in December, Zanfretta disappeared again. Okay, Zanfretta was approaching a tunnel near the Scofaro Pass in his car.
I don't think you can say he disappeared the first time, but go ahead.
No, well, they got a distress call. I'm true.
Right.
Okay.
He was found face down.
He was found face down. There was another incident involving this guy. So he is driving through this tunnel, and his car started to drive itself through the tunnel. And on the other side of the tunnel, there was fog and lights in the fog. He calls in and says, in a very calm voice, he says, there's lights and I'm going out. My car is stopped and I'm going out to look at the lights. And they're like, uh-oh, what is this guy doing again? So
Too bad he was alone.
I know, exactly. They send guys out to go find him. And when they locate his car, they find him again laying in a ditch. His car is hot. But there's a couple different things this time that also point to some physical evidence.
He's got a script clutched in his hand.
There were six.
He's written.
Yes, there's 6 bullets missing from his gun. They can't find the casings. And he claims he doesn't know how the bullets were fired or went missing. The military police come back out. They see giant, enormous footprints in the mud all around the car. And again, they were boot prints. They described them as boot prints. And again, Zanfretta was warm and dry, even though this was like shitty December weather in Italy. The car was hot, super hot to the touch. Zanfretta claimed that he had, again, this is under hypnosis, and this is actually really crazy because they convinced him to go on TV and do the hypnosis and be televised and filmed, and it aired. And so under that televised hypnosis, Zanfretta said that after he got out of the car, the giant green monsters appeared once again, and one of them took his gun and he claims fired the gun silently, and the bullets like disappeared, dearmed him. And then Zanfretta was taken by green light up into the sky, and he found himself in a room full of controls, like a dashboard room, and noted that there...
much like our airplanes might have.
Much like our airplanes might
Go
have.
ahead.
But noted it was much larger. He actually said that the interior of the craft looked much larger on the inside than what it would look like on the outside. So there's some weird dimensional disproportion happening here.
Right.
It's a tesseract. And that there were 10 beings in the room with him. They stripped him naked, covered his eyes, and ran a cold instrument over his chest, saying that they needed to use humans as guinea pigs. Now, for what? I don't know, because as you'll find out, this story is consistently inconsistent. The leader of the Green Monsters told Zanfretta that he was named Almach, and he was the prince of his people, called the Dargos. They had come to Earth because their home planet was dying, and they were looking for a new home. They were planning on building a domed city on Earth, and then they handed Zanfretta an orb containing a golden pyramid that acted as a television displaying images of their home planet. They explained that they had taken 2 animals that they had thought to be alive from the doctor's villa the first night. And that's why they were at this villa. They had taken 2 animals to study. Now, this is where we get into real high strangeness territory.
Sure. I think
this
you're
is
already
also
there.
there's some but this is also this weird thing. This also makes me think that okay, A, he's hallucinating, he's going crazy. But B, there's some weird behavior on these alien parts that seem to me, if I'm going to take this seriously, which is hard to do, that whatever this intelligence is that's contacting him is presenting themselves as these weird creatures because they are behaving very strangely. Because here's the thing. They claim that they stole 2 animals to study. Listen.
Oh, well, I'm all ears.
And the police confirmed that from the doctor's villa, there were 2 stuffed parrots that were stolen.
Wow.
Right? That Zanfretta had no idea about. So it's almost like these entities are like these weird, they're almost trying to be aliens, but they're not doing a good job at selling themselves as aliens.
Well, I mean, they stole 2 animals, which are stuffed parrots.
Yeah.
Do you know what's inside a stuffed parrot? It ain't parrot.
No, I know.
Take these.
That's what I'm saying. So it almost like if he was contacted by a higher intelligence, I'm not sure that intelligence is that much higher. You know what I mean? It may come from a different realm, but it seems it's almost like these entities are wearing the clothes of space monsters and doing a bad job at some. Again, third galaxy, that makes no sense. Stealing parrots, stuffed parrots to study, why? It's almost as if these things are in disguise and doing a bad job of playing the part. That's just something that sticks out to me.
Well, that means that they don't have enough creativity to make it to create something believable.
Yeah,
and they may have that in common with this Italian gentleman.
They might. No, I know. And you have to keep in mind that he was made fun of in the press. This was not something that many people believed or took seriously. So he goes on TV, does this, tells his story. Story goes international. Zanfretta retold the story again under a truth serum. They pumped him full of pentanol or whatever, pentanol. Yeah, and under that, there's a new doctor came in, stepped in, and was like, "All right, let's see if this guy's telling the truth." Pumped him full of drugs, and under that examination, the psychiatrist said, "Look, I don't think he's schizophrenic. His mental health record has been really good up to this. He's a married guy. He had kids. He was a responsible person. He was good at his job. This has just suddenly started to happen. Now, that's not to say that something's going off in his brain suddenly. But he said also under the amount of drugs that we gave him, he's telling his version of the truth."
Sure.
And they said, overall, we find him to be of sound mind and body and a normal person under extreme circumstances. So the story kind of dies down for a few months. And then on July 30th, 1979, it was at 1980, sorry. Zanfretta was abducted for a 3rd time during a patrol route in Genoa. His Vespa was found on a mountaintop by a rescue team from the security company, and Zanfretta was found running in the dark a couple miles away. And he claimed under hypnosis again that he had been on patrol on the Vespa and the aliens came back. They picked him up again in the craft and they showed him the orb again. And they said that they wanted him to give this orb to a man that Zanfretta thought was named Heinke. He kept saying Heinke. And the psychologist, who was a new guy at this time, examining him, he said, "Heinke, do you mean Heineck?" And he goes, "Yes, that's it. Heineck.
I'm getting an H. I'm sensing an H name.
No, and this is a little cold read and leading, but J. Allen Hynek was at the time the foremost authority on UFOs in America. And Zanfretta claims you've never heard of this guy before. I think that's probably a stretch because if you were someone who claimed to be abducted by aliens twice, you're probably going to start
do a little research.
You might do a little research. Now, Hynek, of course, he visited later and he's interviewed Zanfretta. He never received this orb. And in later accounts, Zanfretta claims that he did get it, but he buried it somewhere in the mountains. Okay? What? Yeah. That he had been given the
from
orb
the aliens and then decided not to deliver it?
Then decided not to deliver it. Okay. Yeah. So then, no more abductions for a while until we get to the last couple in early December of the following year. Security officers saw bright lights over Marzano. And driving to the source of the light, the security officers had trouble as their cars shut down and restarted sporadically. Okay, this isn't Zanfretta. These are other guys. They saw yellow lights and a strange cloud got out of the car and fired at the lights, which then faded. They opened fire on the lights? They opened fire at a cloud full of lights.
That seems very irresponsible.
It seems to be, but they made it go away.
They saw lights and they started shooting at them?
Well, because they had gotten another distress call from Zanfretta, and so they were going out to find him. And in the location where the call came from, they saw a glowing mist, a cloud of fog with lights in it, and they shot at it.
Why would they shoot at it?
I don't know. This is just what the report is.
I would offer.
They
why
were terrified.
not?
Yeah.
Really, you don't know what it is, so you try to kill it?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Right? I don't know.
It doesn't seem like that's protocol for.
Well, I'm not saying they were good at their jobs.
Okay.
And there had been on this night, December 2nd, lights all being reported all around Marzano. Now, Zanfretta shows up again out in a ravine near his stopped car. And when they find Zanfretta and wake him up and they talk to him, he claims this is what happened to him that night while these guys are seeing the weird lights.
And shooting at them.
Yeah, and shooting at them.
Because, maybe the lights brought out, maybe they had a cell phone or a wallet and they just thought it was a gun.
Exactly. It turns out they shot. Well, never mind. Zanfretta was at a gas station when he claims that he was approached by a strange, faceless man with a head like an egg, wearing a checkered suit and a silver turtleneck. The Eggman ushered Zanfretta back into his car, which was then driven by itself and moved into a fog with lights emanating out of it. So Zanfretta was taken into a giant mothership craft, he claims. That when he walked into the craft, there was what amounted to a small city inside of this craft. And he could see out portholes and see Earth, that he was outside in Earth's orbit. He could see Earth below. And the reptilian monster creatures are there, the Dargos, and they start showing him around, and they show him giant blue vats of blue liquid where he claims to have seen a caveman. He claims to have seen a frog-human hybrid man that the Dargo said was one of their enemies, and he saw some kind of contained bird creature, all in suspended animation in this tube. And Almach, the prince, showed Zanfretta a book that contained the identities of every human on Earth. And when they try to offer him another crystal orb with the pyramid in it, and Zanfretta was like, "No, I don't want to do this," and he breaks the orb, and they are upset at him because he's not doing their bidding. Now,
good for him.
At one point in this encounter, Zanfretta claims that gunshots were heard, and that even though they seemed to be in Earth's orbit, the Dargos told them that his people were firing at them. And this lines up with the police officer or the security officer's account of shooting into this. But it's weird because to them, they were very close to this object. But in Zanfretta's account, he could hear the gunshots, but they were very,
Yeah.
They were their ship was supposedly outside of orbit. So he was returned. They found him in another ditch. They cleaned him up. They did the hypnotherapy. This is the story that came out. And then the final big abduction took place.
I just picture the aliens like driving around for a while,
Looking for a ditch?
Yeah, where's the ditch? There's this one. We got one. Find
Put
it
it back in there. Let's dry them off first.
Almec, that's the same ditch. I know, but it wouldn't make sense if we
Find
used
a
a different ditch every time.
So, in February of the following year, Zanfretta said he felt compelled to get into his car and just drive. And he came upon, once again, the strange Eggman standing on the side of the road. And the Eggman descended into a triangular craft. And Zanfretta was supposed to follow him. But he had called every time this happens. This is what's so crazy about the story. He always manages to radio in. People come out to look for him. They find him in a ditch. They find him scared, babbling, running around. It's almost like he's like, "Hey guys, I'm about to have a freak out again. Come get me." I mean, the patience with which his fellow security officers treated him was amazing.
And his superiors. Come to think of it.
So anyway, this is interesting though. The security rescue team were dispatched to come find him. They found him once again in a ditch. But this is interesting. They had put monitoring equipment on his car to kind of study the car because this is happening so much. And I don't know what type of scientific monitoring device this is, but they said that the equipment showed that the vehicle had been lifted off the ground. Wow. And that the car, once again, when they found it, was extremely hot inside and outside.
Yeah, that's a liftometer.
Yeah, it's a liftometer. Yeah, it's a science. They have them in Italy. Okay, so although interest eventually died down, Zanfretta's abductions did continue well into it seems the early 90s, although they sort of diminished. And the interesting thing is that in the manner of 5 years, they claimed that he went from looking like a 26-year-old guy to like a fat, like 55-year-old dude with just like bleached white hair.
This had taken its toll.
It totally took a toll on him.
No other explanation for that.
I know. But they just said that in the span of 5 years, he had aged 20 years or something. And Di Stefano followed the case throughout his career. He just kind of treated it like a human interest story. He was not a UFOologist. He didn't necessarily believe all this stuff, but he believed that Zanfretta believed that this
something
stuff
was happening.
Yeah,
he
wrote a whole book about it, and you can find that. I think it's called the Zanfretta case or something. I can look it up. But in the years, 30 some odd years that have passed, 38 years, Zanfretta, he has always stuck to his story. He's remained consistent. He's never said that these things didn't happen. Obviously, the Dargos have yet to build their dome city on planet Earth. Maybe they're still going to do it. Who knows? Maybe they decided after dealing with this guy that they don't want to come to Earth after all. But that's the story of Piero Zanfretta and his weird alien abductions.
Did he ever explain why he decided not to deliver the magic orb? Why he buried it in the mountains?
I think I think he did actually. I think it's in Di Stefano's book, but that's one of the inconsistencies that people point to often. They go, okay, well, if you had this, why didn't you ever give it to anybody?
Seems like a lot more trouble to go to the mountain.
Well, they claim that some people think that the military police actually took it, that they located it and took it.
So he lied on behalf of the military police?
No, I think they
were able to recover.
There's a theory that he took the military police to the place that he buried it and gave it to them, and they were mum on having that object.
Oh, well, that still doesn't explain why he chose not to do what they asked him to do.
Oh, exactly.
It seems like an important event in his life.
Well, here's the thing, and this is kind of the, I didn't leave this out, but he was terrified by these creatures. He kept saying that he was scared they were going to take him away from his wife and kids.
All the more reason to do what they asked.
Well, yeah, you would think. But he by the end of it, that's why they handed him another orb and he threw it down and broke it. He didn't want to. He was by the end of it. He was like, enough's enough. Leave me. He by that point he was like, leave me alone. And there's even a story
just massive Joseph Smith to me.
What's that? Oh, totally. Oh, totally.
Bury these things. Don't show these to anybody.
No, absolutely. In fact, he's very much like Joseph Smith, taking something that's like the golden tablets.
You guys are talking about the
but this
founder
time
of
it's
Mormonism,
yeah, but is an orb with a golden pyramid in it and burying it in the wilderness. I mean, absolutely. But interesting that there's some consistencies between those two weird stories. Higher intelligence handing them an object, saying, "Do this." He hides it away, nobody sees it. Is it fake? Is it real? It's probably fake, but it's still interesting. There is that parallel there. That's probably some sort of archetype that.
But I think this story is just a wild, exaggerated version of more believable abduction stories,
right.
which are harder to poke fun at or poke holes in.
Right.
But I think it's essentially the same thing.
Okay, because we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to ask Scott, what the hell was that?
Yes.
Hey everyone, this is Riley. I wanted to let you know that we've launched our Patreon page. This month we're releasing special episodes like our campfire stories, movie club, and also exclusive behind-the-scenes conversations and videos. This week, we posted a conversation we had with Scott about contacting ETs through DMT. I grabbed it on the break when the guys didn't realize we were recording. Needless to say, Scott wasn't buying it, but it made for some great radio. Our weekly show will of course always remain free, but for $5 a month, our Patreon members will gain full access to the inner sanctum of the BCC. We hope you'll join us there. That's patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub. And thanks for listening.
And we're back, and it's time to ask Scott, what the hell was that? So you were saying before the break that you think that this is... What do you think happened here? You think this guy's making it up for attention? Do you think he's having a psychotic break?
It could be a combination of both. He may be having he may have had a psychic break and then saw the potential in it, and then desired to feel that feeling again, and so had 4 more, 5 more, whatever it was, incidents eye.
Incidents high, yeah.
And I just, I feel, I don't know whether to feel bad for him or to admire his veracity,
right,
and his chutzpah,
right. What do you think about in these stories when they talk about finding physical evidence like footprints, indentations in the ground that look like landing gear had compressed there, when you have military police and security officers corroborating some of this stuff, when the village of or when the area of when like people in Marzano, Italy are seeing lights in the sky, do you chalk that up to being inserted in the narrative as a hoax? Or do you think that people were misidentifying things? Yeah,
I think it falls under the category for me of the clock fell off my mantle. My grandfather has visited. When there are many other explanations for that.
Grandfather clocks got their names, right? And that's why they made them upright. Yeah, they stay on the floor so the grandpa can't knock them over.
Yeah, I think it's like one undeniable theory is it was a landing craft with landing gear as we understand it, and I'm going to grab that one out of the 1,000 other ways it could be explained.
Right.
I like that one because it supports what I want to believe.
Right.
Just like any other theory, I guess. So, I can't say that it wasn't landing gear, but for me, I think that the 1,000 other choices are more convincing.
Right.
I mean, it certainly opens up this whole, this quote-unquote extraterrestrial thing. When these stories get this weird, you try and, tie them to other stories, and you're just like, they don't make sense when they compare together, and you're just like, what is all this? What is if you were to take it at face value that what happened to this guy actually happened, and you were to think Jesus, just what could it all mean?
I think that it is like I said, I find this story insane and probably some type of hoax at the end of the day. However, for the sake of fun, in the name of fun, if let's say these were an alien intelligence, I kind of think the impression I get is that whatever he was making contact or whatever was abducting him was some type of interdimensional entity that was doing a bad impression of aliens. Didn't quite understand our culture, didn't quite understand the human race, was sort of trying to play the part of space aliens and just doing a shitty job at it, and therefore being more confusing, almost like they were not playing a prank but trying to make contact and kind of fucking with this guy in the process.
Your use of the term other dimensional is just a stopgap. Because it's like 100 years ago, it was alien. Anything alien was unexplainable, and therefore the reason. Ghosts are not really explainable, so they're the reason. And other dimensional is just now that aliens are not quite as mysterious to us because we've been exploring them for so many years.
Right.
Other dimensional is like Stan Lee, cosmic rays. It's like cosmic rays caused it.
Sure, except I think what I'm getting to, and again, I don't want to like repeat a bunch of stuff we're talking on the show. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around a lot of these stories. And I think that some of these stories, they make no sense. Obviously, sometimes they're hoaxes, but I'm thinking of that there is beyond the reality that we live in, that there are higher planes of dimension where there are intellectual or other intelligent. There's some higher intelligence out there that is trying to break through. Hold on, it's the same thing. It's come to us in many forms over the years, over centuries. Sometimes they are demons. Sometimes they put on the mask of leprechauns or elves. And sometimes they put on the masks of aliens. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't also aliens from other planets that do visit here, because I think, again, we have a little of column A, a little of column B. And I understand that this is a very vague concept, but in my mind, I am picturing that outside of the third dimension, there's a fourth dimension, a fifth dimension, outside of space-time.
And they're all just kind of tricksters?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I think that there are many different types of entities that live out in that higher dimensional realm. I think some are trickster entities. I think some are perhaps intelligences that are trying to guide us and teach us, perhaps. Now, look, I don't believe this, Scott.
Yeah.
This is the thing I have to keep repeating. This is not a belief of mine.
But you like to think it.
It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
This is, if I were going to write a science fiction novel, maybe I can narrow it down to this and play on the riff on this. This is just me using my imagination, right? Because the thing that I like about this story in particular is that the behavior specifically of these weird creatures is so highly strange. The Eggman wearing a checkered suit it's like something got lost in translation. It's almost as if like some teenage fifth dimensional imps got tapped into our reality and went, let's go be aliens. And they don't quite understand how it's like, no, dude, if you're going to go do that, you got to go classic alien gray. Right. You got to pick them up. You got to come into their bedroom. And they're like, fuck that. Let's be giant lizard monsters. Right. And they're like, we're from the third galaxy, right? Like they can't, I don't know, whatever. I'm just trying to think that it is like this, or some just dumber entity trying to play this part. To what end, I don't know.
Maybe it's translated through Zanfretta's intelligence and the words that he had to use and the images that were in his, memory bank. And, maybe that's just with the filter through which it came.
Yeah.
Right. So like the Bible. Whoever wrote the Bible only knew what they knew.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so look, I don't believe this stuff. That's the way I like to think about it. I offer that as a better version of this story that kind of explains some of the weirdness of it. I don't know. Obviously, we'll never know. And likely this never happened.
Well, I believe every part of it.
I mean, you know what I mean? Well, no, but I'm saying, but the focus of this show is taking these stories that have survived and have passed down. This has some type of lasting power.
And thanks to you.
No, not thanks to me. Thanks to DiStefano, who wrote the book. Thanks to, Zanfretta is still a sort of popular, D-list celebrity. He goes around to conventions. So I'm saying some of these are the equivalent of like our local. This is like our modern folklore here.
Absolutely.
And so I like these stories because they're fun. That's really.
I do too. I love them. They're really fun. I don't believe they happen.
No, that's fine. I mean, yeah. This one is a real stretch.
That one's a wild one.
I do love, a con man. I think they're fascinating.
Yeah.
And hysterical. But I will say that I despise psychics.
Oh yeah, we've had a couple
people.
guests. We've had a few guests. Rachel Bloom was on the show, and she is very anti medium and psychic. And I know that there are listeners out here who are psychics that listen to the show. So
you're not. No offense. And we don't believe you.
No offense. Listen,
but I knew this was coming.
I think that
you offend me, and I'm hoping to offend you.
I think that at large could very well be a charlatan industry, but I also think I'm open to that there are people who actually have that ability.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
You need to watch, and hopefully there'll be a link to the hundreds of videos of Randy, the amazing Randy, disproving all of that. We'll put it up.
I mean, I look forward to it. I love that stuff.
It's great.
Yeah, when we do research, I always love to start with the skeptics version first because it gives you a great angle on some common sense and some practical ways to look at it. But here again, you're always refuted with just for instance. If it's a hoax, then it's a mass hoax because you got other security guards and you got the Italian government involved, and that's when it gets a little sticky for me. Saying, let's put it in the time and context of what's happening here in America. Like for instance, a well-known case like Roswell, where you're saying that the government is in hoaxing on that, and then the eyewitness accounts that all the people that saw the craft and that's where it just gets a little sticky for me. Look, I just think something's happening. I can't just relegate it to like, this guy's a con man or this guy is hallucinating or he's crazy or he wants this attention. Something happened to Zanfretta, and it may not make sense for us, and we may not be able to put it in a little box that like saying, hey, this is obviously what happened, but that's what makes it all the more interesting for me.
Like Craig Ferguson would say.
It's not my business.
None of our fucking business. All right. Before we go, Scott, where can people find you if you want to be found?
No, I'm not social.
Okay. Great.
Where can aliens find
you?
Where
can aliens?
In a ditch.
Yeah. Which ravine should we look for you in? Awesome. Bryce Johnson, anything? You want to plug anything or?
No, just want to say a big thanks. We just launched our Patreon account.
Yep.
And want to say thank you to those of you who have contributed.
In fact, I'm going to do a surprise shout out right here to our Patreon subscribers of last week. Aaron Howden, Linda Barker, Irene Brenton, Jeff Bayad, Michelle Spitzer, Caitlin Rizick, Donna L. Champlin, Elizabeth Hawk, and Jay Bray. The last three of you gave very generous donations. Thank you so much.
Guys, yeah.
We didn't announce we were going to do shout outs, but I think it's a good way to thank everybody.
You will each get a golden orb.
Yes, you will. Look for your golden pyramid in the mail. And if you are interested in becoming a Patreon subscriber, we're doing bonus episodes over there every month. We are working on merch. We hear your requests loud and clear, and believe us, we're working on it. But on Wednesday, April, I believe, yes, the 18th, we're going to release our first Bigfoot Collectors Club movie club episode.
That's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh, thanks.
So for your birthday, we are all going to get together and watch Communion, the film Communion.
Haven't seen it.
And we're going to...
Sagan, right?
Yeah. And we're going to... No, that's Contact.
Oh,
Communion is Whitley Strieber, played in the film by Christopher Walken. And it's a weird... I don't know if the movie holds up. I think the movie might be terrible, but it was one that terrified me as a young man. So we're going to watch it again.
Can't wait.
So we'll have that Patreon episode where we review and talk about the movie Communion. We're going to try to do movies once a month. So if you want to listen to that episode, you can get that only on our Patreon feed. So that'll be up Wednesday, the 18th. And we're putting up bonus episodes between now and then as well.
Cool.
Riley Bray, anything?
No, just get into that Patreon, man. It's a good vibe.
Cool. And thank you so much for listening. Scott, thank you so
man,
much.
my pleasure.
This was a great time. I must say that when I arrived here, I was a very devout skeptic. And I think that story about the checkered suit on the Eggman...
That did it for you, huh?
You know
changed
what,
my mind
man?
today.
I cannot fucking wait to get a call from you being like... Michael, I'm so sorry. The Eggman. I saw the Eggman. I stopped I stopped at Arco on the way home, and there was an Eggman there.
He's got an extra 5 minutes.
Oh my God, that would be
Google
so
Eggman.
great. Thank you all for listening. I want to thank Riley always for producing our show and making it sound great. I want to thank Suneaters for our song. It's from the track "Come Alone," courtesy of Lotuspool Records. And until next week, we remain
In a ditch.
In a ditch. You will find us
Face
next to
down.
a hot car. And don't ask us where our bullets went because we
don't
don't
know.
have a good answer for you. Thanks, guys.
See ya.